Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session of our new series where we will be taking up a particular topic and discussing it thoroughly. This will be helping you in your pre as well as mains preparation. तो आज का टॉपिक जो है इट्स G20 इंडिया समिट 2023. Before we move on to the other important aspects of G20 India Summit 2023, I want to give a brief description of what G20 is. Now, we have already discussed it very thoroughly in our previous short videos. We are going to attach these short videos in the description box. Kindly check it out to get a full sense of what G20 is, how it was created, why it was created, what are its objectives, what are the track meetings that form part of the G20. But just to give you a brief idea of why G20 was created, so since 1990, the world has been seeing several economic shocks and financial crises. So we had the Asian financial crisis, but it was finally in 2008, after the global financial crisis, that G20 was created in the present form as we know today. So even in the 1990s, several countries' leaders thought that they required a platform they found it necessary, where they could come up and discuss such matters. जिसके कारण we had the formation of G33. But ultimately, after the 2008 global financial crisis, France suggested that heads of the states एक ऐसा मीटिंग ऑर्गेनाइज करे, एक ऐसा समिट ऑर्गेनाइज करे जहाँ पे इकोनॉमी शुड बी एट द फोर फ्रंट, ऐसे इकोनॉमिक क्राइसिस को डिस्कस करे, जिसके कारण G20 वॉज फॉर्म्ड एंड G20 held its first meeting in Washington DC, USA in 2008. तो आप लोग को शायद याद होगा कि recently the 18th G20 summit was concluded and India was hosting this year's G20. So India's presidency is part of the Troika, yani the three countries that hosted G20 in the past, present and future. So currently the Troika consists of Indonesia, which held the previous presidency, India, which is holding the current presidency, and Brazil, which will take over the presidency from India in November 2023, therefore holding the future, that is 2024 का presidency. इस साल का theme for the G20 summit in India was Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, यानी वन अर्थ वन फैमिली वन फ्यूचर, जिसे महा उपनिषद से लिया गया है. इस कहावत का डीपर मीनिंग वुड बी द इंटरकनेक्टेडनेस ऑफ अर्थ and all the other elements that are present on it, including humans, animals, plants, and microorganism. ये important है as India pushes for a more connected world, a more globalized world in its truest sense, especially during this Russia-Ukraine conflict. India truly believes that in trying to improve each of these elements, that is the lives of people and other flora and fauna, the overall quality of life of one and all will become better. So let us now discuss the agenda for India's G20 Summit 2023. So agenda जो है, that has been laid down by India. So basically, these are the issues that India has focused on, and the outcome of this entire summit has seen these particular issues being thoroughly discussed as to what actions should be taken. But more before coming to the solutions, the problems have been identified, the issues have been identified. So what are the following agendas? Number 1 is green development, climate finance and life. तो आपको शायद पता होगा that in the Conference of Parties 26 and 27, India laid down and updated its nationally determined contribution. So basically NDCs are such goals that a country sets for itself And these goals will, in the longer run, help the country mitigate climate change or global warming. So, India's NDC included net zero emissions by 2070, then increase the share of non fossil fuel capacity to 50% by 2030, overall, reduce the greenhouse gas emissions and increase carbon sinks, etc. Along with the NDCs, India has been one of the most vocal leaders in completely supporting the setting up of a loss and damage funds, जिसको especially provide किया जाएगा to the global south who suffer from calamities such as floods and heat waves because of the industrialization of the developed countries. So it is through such NDCs and loss and damage fund that India seeks to address environmental challenges and provide for sustainable development and climate finance strategies. Along with that, the Honorable Prime Minister of India had launched Mission Life, यानी Lifestyle for Environment, जो कि बेसिकली एक पब्लिक मूवमेंट है टू एनकरेज इंडिविजुअल्स टू बिकम प्रो प्लानट पीपल. So, the Honorable Prime Minister wants to take these initiatives, these strategies on a global platform to ensure that all the nations take climate change seriously, take global warming seriously, and apply these strategies to fight it. सेकेंड जो एजेंडा है एक्सेलरेटेड इंक्लूसिव एंड रिजिलियंट ग्रोथ. तो देखा जाए तो 2020 के बाद जो भी ब्लैक स्वान इवेंट्स हुआ है लाइक कोविड-19, रशिया यूक्रेन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, these events had the power to shake up global supply chains. इकोनॉमी में बहुत घाटा हुआ ड्यू टू द disruption in such supply chains. इसके कारण poorer nations, especially in global south, have suffered the most. इसलिए India has been pushing for a more inclusive economic growth, जहाँ सब sectors of industry and every section of the society benefit करे. Third जो agenda है that is on accelerating progress on SDGs यानी Sustainable Development Goals. तो बहुत सारे रिपोर्ट्स सजेस्ट कर रहे हैं दैट अचीविंग दीज सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट गोल्स इज़ नॉट प्रोग्रेसिंग एट द एक्सपेक्टेड पेस. इनफैक्ट बहुत सारे नेशंस इंक्लूडिंग डेवलप्ड नेशंस में भी SDGs में प्रोग्रेस नहीं कर पा रहे या तो फिर इसमें प्रोग्रेस करना बंद कर दिए हैं. देयरफॉर अटेनिंग SDGs such as elimination of poverty, food security, energy security, water for one and all, education for one and all, etc. Attaining of such SDGs has been given high priority by India. Number 4 agenda है technological transformation and digital public infrastructure. So India in the last couple of decades has basically shown how technology can ensure a more inclusive society. ये किया है through आधार enabled payments, unified payment interface या UPI, Jan Dhan accounts, then use of biometric to ensure attendance of Manrega workers, etc. Therefore, use of such technology has improved the digital public framework by ensuring a more inclusive society where welfare is ensured for one and all in a transparent and fair manner. The fifth agenda is multilateral institutions for 21st century. India in the last couple of years has been rightly pointing out the futility of institutions such as UN Security Council, या the arbitrariness of World Trade Organization जैसे institutions due to the narrow representation or the preference given to Western nations. India maintain करता है that unless reforms are brought in such institutions, तब तक कोई भी world problem का सुझाव नहीं हो सकता है. Other voices need to be brought on the table, and these voices must be diverse in terms of geography. The permanent five, या P5 nations cannot be the only ones to drive the global order in a dictatorial manner. Then the sixth agenda is women led development. So, India has been pushing for women led development by acknowledging their priceless contribution to both society and economy. So, India sees women leadership in the field of science and technology, yeah, art and culture, etc., as integral to the strengthening of the economy further. Jahan women are heading space missions and winning prestigious sports medals in various international forums, it would be incorrect to hold them back in terms of not providing them education or not allowing them to contribute in the economy. India has been emphasizing the need for the rest of the world to allow women the space and opportunities required to prove themselves and give them the recognition they deserve for making this a better world. Coming to the most important part of this video as to what was the outcome of the 2-day summit held in India. The summit was concluded with the adoption of New Delhi Declaration, जिसको adopt किया गया with a 100% consensus. The first outcome was on technological transformation and digital public infrastructure, जिसमें डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, क्रिप्टो असेट्स एंड आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस को हार्नेस करने की बात की है फॉर द ग्रेटर गुड. The statement also agreed on a global digital public infrastructure repository या GDPIR सेटअप करने के लिए. The declaration also spoke about improving cyber education and cyber awareness for the protection and empowerment of children and youth. दूसरा जो आउटकम है was on climate change. So G20 leaders agreed to increase their efforts to phase out or phase down the use of fossil fuels. साथ ही साथ they also agreed to ensure financing transition to low carbon, especially for developing countries. They agreed that there is a need to use carbon pricing and non-pricing mechanisms and incentives towards carbon neutrality and net zero emissions. और sustainable finance को भी बहुत importance दिया है in this G20 declaration. Third जो outcome है, in that G20 nations have agreed that they will push for equitable growth and financial stability. So regulation of crypto assets have been put at the forefront. The group has also promised to ensure level playing field and fair competition by discouraging protectionism and market distorting practices. With regards to artificial intelligence, G20 nations ने recognize किया the need to protect human rights and upholding the principles of the same by ensuring transparency, fairness, accountability, holding of ethics and privacy in development and deploying of artificial intelligence. इसके अलावा G20 has also focused on reforming the multilateral development banks. Institutions जैसे World Bank and International Monetary Funds must effectively address debt vulnerabilities in developing countries. इसे किया जा सकता है through additional and effective resource mobilization such as additional funding from shareholders या balance sheet optimization या तो फिर private financing these MDBs. G20 nations have also been pushing forward for the management of debt crisis in 4 nations, which are Zambia, Ghana, Sri Lanka, and Ethiopia. Let us take a look into some of the other highlights of the New Delhi Declaration. So, with regards to the Russia-Ukraine conflict, G20 has pledged to act in a manner consistent with the principles of UN Charter. They have agreed to refrain from threat or use of force to seek territorial expansion or infringement of sovereignty or to encroach upon the territorial independence of any state. G20 ने emphasize किया that use या threat of using nuclear weapons is absolutely inadmissible. They've also advocated for peaceful resolution of conflicts through diplomacy and dialogue. They have also urged Russia and Ukraine to ensure uninterrupted immediate delivery of grain, fuel, fertilizers, etc., especially to the global south nations. This is to prevent any further economic shock due to the lack of food or energy security. Then the Delhi Declaration underlined India's push for One Health approach, which it has been doing for a long time. And it has committed itself to strengthening the global health architecture as well as supporting climate resilient and low carbon health system. But one of the biggest outcome of this G20 summit was that G20 is now no longer G20. It has become G21 as African Union was admitted into this group. Now African Union is basically a coalition of 55 African nations. We have thoroughly discussed on the importance of inculcating African Union into this G20 group. We are attaching the short video in the description box. Do check it out to understand the importance of admitting African Union into this G20 group. Another important outcome out of this G20 summit, which is relevant for your pre as well as mains preparation, is the launching of India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. Now, we had made several short videos on the importance of this IMEC. Again, we are attaching these videos in our description box. Check it out to have a thorough and good understanding of the ramifications of launching this IMEC. These outcomes have already been discussed thoroughly. Do take a look at this to have a better understanding if required. And take a note of the keywords so that you can inculcate the same in your mains papers. This brings us to the last question as to why is this G20 important for India? अब एक चीज़ याद रखिएगा, G20 प्रेसिडेंसी का अपॉर्चुनिटी रोटेशनल बेसिस में होता है, यानी हर कोई मेंबर ऑफ G20 विल गेट अ चांस टू होस्ट द समिट once in 20 or 21 years now. So, therefore, the achievement does not lie in hosting the G20 summit, but in actually bringing a document that is adopted with 100% consensus. And that has been the case for India. इंडिया का G20 प्रेसिडेंसी एक ऐसा टाइम में आता है when the world is at an intersection filled with global challenges such as Russia-Ukraine war, rising crude oil prices, food price inflation, slowdown of global demand after COVID-19, etc. G20 ने इंडिया को एक अपॉर्चुनिटी दिया from being a rule taker to being a rule maker and contributing to the global economic recovery. As I've told you before that G20 basically एक premier institute है that looks into economic cooperation on an international level. Therefore, economic problems due to the pandemic or the Ukraine conflict have been the concern for the majority. Therefore, the outcome at G20 New Delhi, that is the New Delhi Declaration, which has been adopted with 100% consensus, that has been the talking point for all. Considering the fact that USA and European Union have been at loggerheads with Russia and China, especially on the Ukraine issue, it was predicted that such consensus would not be achieved. Uske ऊपर the Russian and the Chinese president did not attend the summit. बहुत लोगों का मानना था that ये summit success नहीं हो पाएगा due to the absence of these two leaders. However, despite their absence, all the countries could agree on certain basic issues such as food and energy security, gender equality, climate financing, sustainable agriculture and healthcare system, protection of human rights, etc. But more importantly, Western nations as well as Russia and China could agree on the paragraph related to the Ukraine conflict. All the nations agreed that territorial sovereignty should be upheld. and peace should be established as soon as possible. In fact, the declaration had also included the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi's famous saying that today's era is not of war. Therefore, getting consensus on such divisive issues is an absolute diplomatic victory. By including African Union into G20, it shows that India is absolutely serious with regards to being a very vocal leader of the global south and that it walks its talk. The fact that अफ्रीकन यूनियन को इतनी जल्दी एडमिट किया गया है इन G20 ऐसा शायद किसी ने सोचा ना हो. But it is only with successful diplomatic lobbying that the impossible has been made possible. India has not only highlighted its achievement in digital public infrastructure, sustainable agriculture through cultivation of millets, etc., but it has also provided a roadmap for furthering the sustainability of agriculture, healthcare system, ensuring data privacy in age of social media, pushing for more inclusive gender equality, prevention of terrorism, etc. The G20, which is now G21, which was concluded, is a milestone in India's history and, if effectively implemented, will be the talking point for years to come. Now, this brings us to the end of our video. If you found this informative, please like, share, and subscribe us on YouTube and follow us on Instagram. Thank you, and I'll see you in our next video.